Years ago, Charles Stanley was preaching, and he talked about a book called They Found the Secret. I went and found that book, read that book. It changed Charles Stanley's life. I read that book. It was an amazing book. I have 2 copies in my office. But this man, Raymond Edman, wrote that book. Now, years before that, he was a missionary in Ecuador. Came out of the jungles one day, desperately ill. Doctor examined him and said, go start making preparations for the funeral. In that climate, they have to bury him quick, so they made all the preparations for the funeral. Thousands of miles away, where he was from in America, a man named Dr. Joseph Evans walked into a prayer meeting and says, I am deeply concerned about Raymond Edman. I don't know anything why, but we need to be praying for him. And they prayed for him that night. God answered their prayer. He recovered, and he lived another 40 years. And in that 40 years, he also wrote this book. And this book talks about those who really lived. They may have lived religious lives, Christian lives for a while, but then they finally got it. Finally figured out what it meant to know God and to trust him at a deeper level. They found the secret. And God wants us, and part of that is realizing that he offers us power in our lives. Now, Paul's writing this from a prison cell. He's writing this in his own difficult situation. And yet he's talking about God's power, God's presence, God's pleasure. And he prays again that they would be strengthened with this might. And that's the same word we get our word dynamite from, dunamis. That they would have that in their life. That God would continually provide that dynamite power in their life. And this is the same God that we have today. You can pray the same prayer. And most of us, when we think about being strengthened by God, we think about being strengthened for maybe a ministry, for God to use us in a greater way. What he's talking about here is that they would be strengthened with patience and long-suffering and joy. He didn't say, God, by your power, deliver them from the difficulties, but in the midst of them, give them patience. In the midst of them, give them long-suffering. Long-suffering to deal with the problem, patience to deal with the difficult people in their life, and to do it not just to get through it, but to do it with joy. To not lose their joy in the process of going through the trial. That's what he prayed. Most of us, when we get in a difficult moment, we want people to pray, get us out of here. Get us out of here. Get this over. Remove this from my life. Paul would pray, keep them in it, but supernaturally supply them to be greatly used in it and to glean from it what they need in their life. I'm not sure we want to be prayed for like that. But Paul knew what God wanted. Some of y'all think God's not at work because he leaves this hardship in my life. He's very much at work. He's using that. And Paul prayed that it would be used in the fullest sense.